when Thomas Jefferson writes those famous English words, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. He owns 130 human beings at that time, including some of his own family members. And he understands that 1/5 of the population will enjoy none of those rights and liberties. So we are founded on a hypocrisy, on a paradox. But black people read those words and said, oh, we're going to believe that these words are true and apply to us and fight.
Once this magazine came out, there were many historians who came after you and said, no, this is incorrect. The primary reason that America sought its independence from Britain was not because they wanted to maintain slavery, it was because of taxation without representation. It wasn't the primary cause. Why do you think there's such a resistance to slavery being one of the primary causes of America breaking away from Britain?
Because we need to believe as a country that our founding was pure. That yes, we had some troubles, including holding 500,000 people in bondage, but that largely we were a nation founded to be exceptional in these majestic ideas, and that our founders, though complicated men, were men who were righteous. But when you argue that our founders were, many of them, very hypocritical, and that you can't just simply overlook the fact that slavery was a motivation in some of the colonies. Yes, taxation was a motivation, but also the ability to keep making a lot of money off of human bondage.
Right.
That is very unsettling, not just to the average American, but to historians who have seen their job as protecting that founding narrative. The difference is, when you're black in this country, you don't have the luxury of pretending that that history didn't exist. And what that history has done is really marginalized our story, when really the story of black people and slavery is central to the United States.
When you worked through this project, there are new pieces of information you discover. There are stories that you find were never told that need to be told. And I know you can't write about everything, but I was interested in whether or not you would think that other countries who are involved in slavery get off easier than the United States, because the one thing they did differently to America as we know it is that they sort of outsourced slavery. If you think about whether it was the Americas or Spain or many of these other colonial nations, their slaves were in the countries, and then they left those countries and were like, we're done with slavery, but they also don't have to deal with the people they enslaved, whereas America has an interesting relationship where you have to deal with the people because they're still here. So not to feel sorry for America, but do you think there's also a reckoning that should happen in this way in Europe maybe?
Oh, for sure. All the colonial powers need to have a reckoning, and reckoning also needs to happen on the continent of Africa. But I think the fundamental difference, there's two. Yes, slavery occurred in the bounds of the country that would become America.
Right.
But also, of those colonial powers, America is the only country that was founded on the idea of individual rights and liberties.
Interesting.
That was founded on the idea of God-given, inalienable rights. None of those other European, these were monarchies. They weren't founded on the idea that every person had equal rights, but we were. So that hypocrisy really matters. And of course, I argue that that hypocrisy is why we have struggled so much to get over and address the issue of slavery, because it forces us to acknowledge this lie at our founding.